why did you choose the University of Texas?
Oh, wow.
Where are you from?
So I was born in Monterrey,
Yeah.
in Mexico.
In
but
Mexico.
my family immigrated here when I was 2. My dad was finishing a degree at Baylor, and he was teaching physics there.
Oh.
And from the ages of 2 to 5, I lived in Waco. And then age of 5, he got a job at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And I was really raised like in South Texas, Corpus Christi, like 5 to 18. And out of high school, I had like no collegiate options.
Because grades were not good.
Grades were not good. Grades were not ideal. I was super ambitious, but I was not, I didn't care academically.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents and I came to an arrangement, and it was essentially, hey, we'll help you stay in Austin for a year, but you have to transfer to UT or move back home to Corpus Christi. And no shade on Corpus Christi, Texas, maybe a little, but I did not want to go back to Corpus Christi because I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial,
Mm-hmm.
and I understood that Corpus Christi likely didn't have the connections, education, resources, etc. And UT was like the most perfect option, although it was like so out of the realm of possibility. When I was a graduating senior, I busted my butt at ACC, graduated there with a 4.0, and got into UT.
So you did 1 year at ACC?
I did 1 year at ACC.
And you just got like 4 on every single thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then did you just like straight apply to UT, or did you come and meet with somebody and find a way in?
Yeah. So ACC is wonderful in the fact that they have so many like advisors who are fierce advocates for getting into the surrounding schools, Texas State and UT. Yeah. So I had an amazing advisor. I think her name was like Kendra Singletary, and she really helped motivate me and say like, hey, you can transfer into UT, man. You just have to lock in for a little while. So she kind of set the foundation.
What was your major? It was PR?
Yes.
Okay.
It was PR, minor in business.
Okay, because I know you took one of the entrepreneurial classes at UT that was specifically about, we're going to say CPG a lot, so consumer product goods. CPG is anything like beverages, any consumer product that's packaged up, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, CPG, just for people who don't know.
Totally.
But you took like some entrepreneurial class, right, while you were at UT that was all about CPG and entrepreneurialism?
Exactly.
Entrepreneurism, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't part of like the entrepreneurship major or anything like that. I just saw that a food and beverage entrepreneurship practicum was offered, and I was like, that is literally what I think I want to do in like a class format. How wonderful, right? And it was at the Macomb School of Business, and it was taught by this wonderful professor named Marissa Epstein, and she is mainly known for working under the Michelle Obama's health initiatives during the Obama's presidency, and she helped pass through a lot of great reform. And although I was a student experiencing the changes in school lunches at the time, she was such an incredible role model for me, not just from like a business leadership sense, but I think at that age, I was also trying to figure out like, oh man, what kind of person do I want to be? And I'm sure she remembers this, but after class one day, I went up to her and I was kind of awestruck because she just explained like U.S. food policy, some super dry subject in such incredible, like vivid detail. She was funny with it, something I really appreciated, and super humble. So after class, I pulled her aside and I was like, Marissa, how do I become as well-rounded as you? She was hitting the jokes, the education, everything, right? So she taught me a lot about networking, making friends, on top of, her actual education lended itself incredibly well to assisting the development of Bawi. She's a PhD in nutrition from Stanford and an MBA from Stanford, like business and food and beverage innovation intelligence, absolutely off the charts, coupled with like incredibly strong, strategic knowledge around policy. So that practicum really cemented everything because I had access to secondary market research, an incredible expert, and entrepreneurs. So the student to faculty ratio, and I think, really important part of this discussion, it was like 8 students to 1 professor, 2 TAs.
Okay.
Weekly class and weekly presentation. So I was quite literally presenting to, some of the co-founders of Sweet Leaf Tea, Deep Eddy Vodka, C4, like all these CPG darlings saw me present weekly about product market fit or my secondary market research exploration.
Was this all for Bawi at that time?
It was all for Bawi.
Okay.
And before that, I had started with this like different CPG concept, but Marissa, she was like, you need to toss that one aside. I think this better for you Hispanic beverage has some legs to stand on.
So like Bawi literally did start at UT.
Absolutely. And it was like access to the secondary market research and Marissa, and ideating on, all of these assumptions, because you have these like underlying assumptions as an entrepreneur, which is like, I think there's room in the market for a culturally representative, better for you Hispanic beverage product. And then an incredible educator, professor, mentor will then take that hypothesis into testable, components.
Yeah.
Whether it's like, okay, go do primary customer market research, which means go to Whole Foods downtown and start asking people open-ended questions about what they find refreshing.
So you did that?
Actually did that.
Okay.
Right? Secondary market research to, okay, let's digest every long-term academic report around sugar-sweetened beverages or SSBs, like this health innovation problem we're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. Or let's read every still and sparkling water report we possibly have access to and digest all of the findings for it. So
you were doing all that in that class?
All that.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so while you were on campus, just going back, like you were starting Bawi, and did you do anything else while you were on campus? Like, were you involved in anything else, or it was all about your business?
Man, I wish I could say I was involved in a whole lot more, but candidly, like college for me, I was so dialed in on trying to get a business off the ground. It was like my sole focus. Pros and cons of being really ambitious and hard on yourself. Like, if you were to ask me like day one Bawi and like the food and beverage program, hey, like when do you think this would be scaled? Like when do you think it would be at X size? I would have said like, yo, dude, like 2-3 years from now.
Yeah, like I'll be like selling it like in 2-3 years.
For
huge.
Sure.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not how it happened.
Not at all.
So
100%.
So like what was step one? Like so you're in this class, your teacher's awesome, she's helping guide you, you're getting to present in front of all these people that have established brands. Yeah. What was the first step for Bawi? It started at the farmer's market?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And
which I feel, by the way, we could do an entire, the amount of brands that have come out of the Austin farmers market or Dallas just farmers markets that start there. It's crazy.
Yeah. Poppy.
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
Whoa.
You're like dreams. So y'all started at the farmers market over by the mall, right? Barton Creek Mall, or the one downtown?
Barton Creek Mall. Yeah. Okay. The downtown one wouldn't have us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, how does that work?
I'm not trying to beef with farmers markets right now. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, so when you start, you're in college, you have this idea, and you were doing all the juicing at home, basically.
Yeah, so we were doing the juicing first in our apartments, and then a commercial kitchen.
Okay.
So we spent a ton of time in commercial kitchens, like hand juicing fruits we would buy at Costco. Grind, like it was like a childhood math problem. Like Victor has 110 watermelons, blah blah blah. How many servings of agua fresca can he produce? But we were trying to self-fund the development of the business. And spoiler alert, in like consumer packaged goods, like something that requires material components, right? It's incredibly cost prohibitive. So to your question of like, how do you get started? I think most entrepreneurs have to follow this flow chart. Do you have access to friends and family funding? Yes. Okay. You can get started. For a lot of people, it's a no, and you have to figure out how to get out of this proverbial cold start, so to speak. And it's different across categories in CPG, but I can speak for beverage specifically. Our MOQs, or minimum order quantities, are incredibly high, and that is quite cost prohibitive, because if your average entrepreneur wants to make a canned beverage, they're going to have to qualify, a co-man, a manufacturer that can run them, that is open to producing a very small amount, which is hard to do. Like, a lot of these guys will charge, let's say hypothetically, $20,000 to $50,000 per like minimum run, and that's without breaking into the can order you have to make, the sleeves, the raw materials, everything else. So all this to say, we were attempting to self-fund the development at the farmers markets for about 6 months.
Like what kind of money were you? So Saturday, you're there all day. You've been juicing the night before. You're in college.
Totally.
And like, how much are you leaving with? Like money wise at the end of a farmer's market day?
I mean, selling out, super successful day, let's say $500.
Okay.
So we were making like $2,000 a month. We were putting in hours.
So like hours and hours and hours
of labor, right? For like $2,000 a month. And at the end of the experiment, when COVID came around, because COVID was really what started the fundraising process for us. It was
because you couldn't be at the farmers markets.
Nope, we couldn't be at the farmers markets at all. And at this time, I had started working for a startup here in town called Golden Ratio. And Clark, the founder, I essentially became his right-hand man when it came to fundraising. And Clark was an incredible salesman. He actually worked for Keller Williams. And Keller Williams was like one of his mentors, like personally.
Like the Keller Williams.
The Keller Williams helped teach him how to sell, I guess. And it took me about 9-10 months of learning the lessons through Clark Nowlin. And I eventually got Patrick Terry from P. Terry's Burger Stand to become our first investor. And he invested enough for us to quit our jobs and pursue Bawi full time. And his investment then got other people excited.
Because he's a big one. He's a big name.
For Austinites, right? Yeah. We talk about P. Terry. It's like everyone knows P. Terry if you've lived here longer than like 3 months.
He's a Longhorn. And the last time we met, you had said a number about how many times you had emailed him, and it blew my mind. And I think it's important. Like, it's not like you just emailed him and he's like, yes, I want to invest. Like, how many times did you consistently email to get an investor?
It was over a dozen for Patrick. I would say my average for a lot of these people, I mean, it drops over time as you become more effective and get more wins.
But in the beginning, where you were just like a dozen?
Absolutely. Okay. And it's like, I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs now on fundraising specifically, and the like foundational piece of advice that Clark gave me back in the day was every follow-up you're doing has to add some sort of value. You can't let these people disappear whenever you're following up with them. They have to know you exist, and you got to be adding something to the conversation. So whenever you're trying to close a meeting on anyone, the just circling back is like not a good use of your time at all.
Like bumping this to the top of the inbox, but not adding anything.
100%. Yeah. And incredible salespeople, they add value almost every pass. So for me with Patrick, I can look through the thread and see like, hey, Patrick, just got this awesome merch design. Would love to see which one you prefer. Same thing with canned materials. Same thing with feedback. Same thing with, we got another investor to come in. Like, I would use every sort of piece of value add humanly possible to move the ball down the field in the conversation.
How I think, and I always like ask, like, it can just feel so defeating.
Oh yeah.
Email after email after email. And so it's like, how do you know when enough is enough? Or you just have to turn that off in your brain. And if you're adding value, at least you're giving them something.
For sure. Yeah. And if someone ever tells you like, yo, stop. Like,
you should stop.
You should stop. I've gotten those before for sure, where it's just like, yo, really not a good fit, dude. you know, I'm already like a dozen follow-ups deep, and you respect that for sure. But if you don't get that and they're in your funnel, I don't think it hurts to, decrease the frequency you're following up with. Because these like idiosyncrasy credits, these like relationship credits we inherently have with everyone we talk to, like they're incredibly important. And if someone's callously unresponsive for a really long time, definitely don't be following up multiple times a week, right? Because then you could ruffle some feathers, and there's nothing worse than like someone following up with you 6 times and hitting you with a phone call like out of the blue, where it's like, dude, I didn't respond to your email.
Don't call me.
I don't want to hop on a call.
Yeah. So you graduated in 2019. When did the funding come in? Your first initial funding from Patrick Cherry, who's a Longhorn.
For sure. So I graduated in 2020.
Oh, your records say 2019.
Really?
Yeah, with the school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, since I'm on campus, I'll look into that.
Okay.
So we got the funding 2021.
Okay.
Was probably first
and
money.
That's when you could actually start moving forward with a canned beverage, because you had some money that you could actually go and do that.
Exactly. To purchase the minimum quantities of cans of juice, line time.
And for those who don't know, Bawi is a better for you agua fresca. It's lower in sugar, lower in calories, but like has taste. It's not like a lot of the sparkling waters on the market, which are great, but they don't have a lot of flavor. They're an essence. Yours actually like has flavor.
Exactly.
Right.
For sure.
And so how'd you come up with the name Bawi?
Yeah. So Bawi actually came from my dad. And for some context, my dad is an egghead by every definition of the word. Like, he's an incredibly educated man. He has 3 master's degree, PhD, and he was essentially like a mathematical savant in Mexico, in an area called Cuauhtemoc, where we're from. And Cuauhtemoc, in the Chihuahua area in northern Mexico, there are the Raramuri peoples that live there, and it's a native group of peoples who are known for their ultra long distance running ability. There's a book called Born to Run all about this. And it's super interesting because you'll see the Raramuri, otherwise known as the Tarahumara people, you'll see them compete in global ultra long distance marathons, and they will beat the brakes off of people in like super optimized running shoes. And they're wearing like thin leather sandals, and they're eating a mixture called pinole, like the literally least optimized scientifically, humanly possible, but they're incredible.
Yeah.
And I digress. Their name for spring water or mineral water is Bawi.
Okay.
And whenever we were starting the practicum, I asked my dad, I was like, we need a brand name to get started. Can you think of something? It's 2 syllables, has cultural significance. You got 72 hours.
And he came up with it?
Yeah, and he came up with that. Yeah, and it's I can't imagine us using any other trademark at this point.
Yeah.
It's just like so synonymous with the brand. It's been such a part of my life for such a long time, but he doesn't let me forget it.
He's like, I did it. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, so you start the whole process, and everything I can think of is starting a canned beverage must be one of the hardest things out there. It has to be so competitive. It costs so much money, from what I've heard. Like, it's just constant fundraising. So you said, like, when you were young in college, you thought, oh yeah, this will be like 2 to 3 years. And it's much longer, right?
Oh yeah.
What was the first step? Was it finding the branding? Because you definitely did an investment in the branding.
Totally. Yes. I think like step 1 for most everyone is trying to determine if your product has product market fit. That is the most important thing, because a lot of entrepreneurs who are able to, raise money for these concepts that don't really have legs to stand on long term would serve themselves super well if they did like early market testing.
Instead of just saying, no, this is the right idea.
100%, right? Yeah. Like these ashwagandha infused sparkling zebra milks probably should rethink themselves.
Okay.
V1, right?
Okay.
So I think this is a super important part of the conversation, because these sorts of questions influence your ability to scale the company from a growth capital perspective, like quite directly. And if your total addressable market or your TAM isn't big and realistic enough, then you will essentially like die upon arrival.
So you felt like the audience was there?
I felt like the audience was there. So I felt like there was not only a problem to solve in the health innovation conversation around Hispanic beverages, but I felt that there was a massive opportunity for cultural differentiation between the still, sparkling water, better for you soda categories.
Yeah.
And really that inspiration came from like my binational experience, where I'm a first generation Mexican immigrant. I spent so much of my time in Mexico growing up too. And for me as a Mexican immigrant, consumer, etc., it was like, hey, I think I have 3 staple Hispanic beverages that I adore, and I know my family, friends adore, and I can name them. It's like, for me, the 2 most important ones have been cane sugar Coca-Cola and Jarritos.
Yep.
Like those 2 are so emblematic of nostalgia and cultural significance for myself and for tens of millions of Latinos. However, it was apparent that these like behemoth nostalgic beverage companies were not innovating on health. It didn't seem to be a priority of theirs until very recently as the market has shifted.
Well, and like not to like compare with like Siete, right? A Longhorn business, and it is better. It's culturally and the same, and they're doing something that's healthier.
Yep, exactly.
You know, essentially, right? And so how cool that you're like in that.
For sure, and slowly beginning to influence this like massive ship of these CPG companies, these cultural ones. And on the Siete note too, tying back to like your original question of like, what's step 1, this product market fit, I think it was super important for me to be able to understand the market that came before me. And what I mean by that is there had been other attempts at canned agua frescas or ready to drink agua frescas, you know, better for you Hispanic beverages, tepaches, things of that sort, right? And what Siete Foods did that we took an incredible amount of inspiration and education from was realizing that if you're a cultural brand trying to create a mass market product to like revolutionize a category, you need to not only speak to your cultural segment you're trying to represent, you need to speak to the broader market. And speaking in plain English, you need to speak to white and non-white consumers. And these conversations are held very openly, right? Whenever you speak to different entrepreneurs. And I think it's just so important that if you are a cultural founder bringing a food and beverage product to market, you understand how your food and beverage product is received by any random shopper passing by. So it's a point of pride at Bawi that if a customer walks past us on shelf, they don't need to know what an agua fresca is in order to be interested in the product and in the brand. Our front panel delivers in saying, this is likely a sparkling fruit juice, better for you product. It's fun, right? It's cool. The nutrition panel validates some of the initial assumptions, and it is a Trojan horse into agua fresca, a Hispanic food and beverage category in such a beautiful way. And ideally at scale, this changes the fabric of how we interact with cuisine. Like quite literally, these food and beverage products thought of at their broadest sense, you are selling these pieces of culture. Like Siete Foods is selling Mexican wedding cookies. That blows my mind.
Does it?
My white friends had no clue what that was 5 years ago. Like quite a few of them, they're bringing like these staples, but their brand introducing all of these different tangentials, Mexican food and beverage products. It delivers before its Hispanicity. Like it's intriguing before that.
Okay, so somebody who's like, oh my God, I want to make a product. I want to make a beverage. Like, what is the thing you tell to them? Like, is the hardest thing? Like, get ready.
Oh, well, I have that first conversation about like product market fit, right? Just to see cross the first checkbox of, is this journey worth going on? Once that is crossed, you need to generate some sales data, which means you need to organize some sort of minimum production run.
Yeah.
Usually, a lot of small beverage companies will start at breweries.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
They'll find some like line time at a brewery. So we worked with this gentleman named Scott who owned and operated Adalbert's Brewery in North Austin. And although breweries are an incredible way to like get into the market, word of warning, this is where you will learn about food science. Like our first few production runs, I don't know if I've shared this, but I sent a ton of investor samples out to some of the like biggest cats in Austin, so to speak.
Yeah.
And after that first production run, I start getting texts from them. And it's like a picture of an exploded can, right?
Oh.
There was brewer's yeast in our line and it was contaminated. And we ended up making like thousands of cans that were just like fermenting time bombs.
What is that day like when your investors are texting you?
Yeah. Well, they never became investors, at least that batch.
Okay.
But I mean, panic, absolute panic mode.
Yeah.
Like, I basically have to let everyone else know that I shipped product off to, like, yo, you need to toss this. I had a ton of inventory at my house too at the time. And whenever you hear a can like pop a little bit, it doesn't pop all at once. These cans are like super sturdy and they will expand fully until they look like almost like a balloon.
Yeah.
And then they'll explode. So I was just hearing it in my house like,
You're like, oh
panic.
No. So like, where do you want to be? So I think it's important on this podcast. We're talking to all different types of entrepreneurs and we're talking to some that are at the end of their career, the middle of their career. And I would say you're still at the beginning. You might not think that, but you are because you're, you graduated in 2019.
Totally.
But you're still at the beginning. Like, where do you want to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I love doing, what really fills my cup is like helping other entrepreneurs out.
Oh, really?
And I know once this is all said and done, I've got a lot of ideas that I want to pursue. But specifically, I think one thing that's become incredibly important to me is helping elevate entrepreneurs who are socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Okay.
So I started my office hours in December where I will speak with underrepresented entrepreneurs weekly about fundraising specifically.
How do they find you?
So LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I had a submission form and I am booked through Q1 and Q2.
Wow.
And then I'm helping a couple other friends brands. I brought you one of my friends brands today in your little goodie bag.
I can't wait.
It's called Senor Mango.
Okay.
It's made by my friend Daniela Wong. Danny, she just moved here from Mexico City, and I'm helping her figure out how to fundraise because most funding in the U.S. for startups, it's friends and family funding, and it's funding based off of assets. So if you're from socioeconomic classes that historically have less assets, it's harder for you to get these like small business loans.
Yeah.
So really, I want to help the early stage founders out some way, somehow. I don't know if how that's gonna materialize, but I know you have to practice being the person you want to be.
Yeah.
And it became like super important for me to do this now.
That's cool because I would assume you're still really busy with Bawi trying to grow it.
For sure.
Constantly.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like I'm assuming that's a full-time job still.
Yeah. My homie Eric Lugo, he has this amazing clothing business called Amire here in town. And he's going to start hosting sewing workshops at my warehouse.
Oh, cool.
Which is really cool. But doing stuff like that really moves the needle. And what I hope to accomplish is like maybe a year of doing this won't move the needle socioeconomically. But what happens if I do a lifetime of something like this?
Yeah.
That would be really cool and encourage other people to do similar things where it's like, hey, if this is a priority for you, if this is something you envision yourself doing at one point in time, you should do a little bit of it right now.
Yeah.
Whatever you can. So action expressing priorities is like my MO.
That's cool. I want to ask, we've mentioned Siete. They got purchased by Pepsi. Poppy is the big news. I don't know when this is going to run, but that's big news out of Austin. Is Austin and now South by is cutting back on music. I'm like, are we the CPG capital of the world? Are we no longer the music capital of the world, but are we the CPG capital of the world? Because those are two big brands. Tecovas started here, and they're about to have a store in Soho. Like, I'm like, the brand's coming out of Austin. So does that excite you, or is it like more competition? Or?
Oh no, I love it.
Yeah.
It's
Are we the capital? Like, would you say?
I think we're swinging.
Like when people go to Expo West, which is one of the big CPG things, are they all like, what's coming out of Austin next?
I think so. Like there's been so many eyes on Austin, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Like we have a couple institutional investors, and these people like represent big VCs, big companies, etc. And they literally fly to Austin and spend time in Austin looking for the next emerging brands. Like I think we're a capital in CPG for so many reasons. There's just like, I'm not saying there's a lot of slipstreams in Austin, but I think there's a very welcoming ecosystem of people in the consumer goods space.
Like you guys all like each other?
For the most part,
nice.
yeah, we all high five each other and root each other on.
That's nice.
Totally. And I think like in other major cities, like if we think of San Francisco or New York, it may be a bit more daunting going up to these people in bigger cities. I'm just thinking of what it would be like Victor freshly graduated from NYU. Like, I don't know if I would be as cavalier doing something in like a massive metropolis versus
here in Austin.
Yeah.
I will say it's pretty cool. One of the first things I did when I started at Texas X's and started the Longhorn Business Network is I walked through a grocery store and I took pictures of all the Longhorn brands. And there are so many. Like there are so many different Longhorn brands at grocery stores. It's pretty flipping cool.
Oh yeah.
Okay, some questions for you that I ask everybody at the end, but I always have to read them. Anyway, what was one of the most memorable class? Would have to have been the practicum, right?
I mean, I would definitely say the practicum, but you're making me think of my last class ever, which is the incomplete modernization of Latin America, taught by Professor Gregory Knapp.
Okay.
It was an incredible class about like post-colonial Latin America.
Oh, wow. So like real specific.
I loved that class so much. And I remember that class really well because it was the day before we're released for spring break, and this was the year of COVID.
Yeah.
And Professor Knapp tells everyone at the end of class, like, seniors, we just got an email from administration. You guys probably are not coming back. And just myself and all my senior friends were like, oh, wow, that's the saddest thing we've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I had just started hitting my stride socially, too, which was so funny. Like last semester, senior year.
Yeah. You're like, peace.
100%. And besides that class, I'll say two more. There's a science, technology, and politics class taught by Professor Wellhausen. I don't know if it's still around, but she was a Russian ambassador.
Whoa.
Super educated person and talks a lot about game theory. And lastly, professional writing classes changed my life, changed the way I fundraise, communicate, etc. I think the College of Communications develops incredible entrepreneurs by default because the way we think about offerings, positioning, etc. really moves the needle for entrepreneurs.
That's cool.
And Tamara Bell taught a professional writing class, and she fundamentally changed the way I communicate and made me very effective at fundraising. I love you, Tamara.
Advice you give to somebody starting UT?
Oh, starting UT. Take classes that intrigue you. Basically, don't let learning become fully boring if you can avoid it, because the people we have walking the 40 acres are like luminaries within their fields, and it is a blessing to be able to go up to any of them and like speak to experts on any buckets of your curiosity.
I will say, like, one of the themes that I hear from everybody who has come in and done this podcast, and I unfortunately don't have any. There was a professor that helped me get my first job. So yes, I guess I did reach out, but it's like y'all consistently have not just like reach out, you have relationships with some of the professors, and they actually helped you and your business. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur.
Or a founder?
Absolutely. At this stage in Bawi's, in my career, I would say everything's going to take a lot longer than you think, and it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Still worth it?
Still worth it, but you have to be incredibly patient. And I think the character traits that define like a lot of the entrepreneurs and people I look up to is you have to have like this like calloused sense of optimism all the time, like an unwavering sense of optimism, because the hard days are horrible. They're really, really tough. And if you don't cultivate a culture within yourself that eventually starts impacting the organization of radical optimism, you are going to get beaten down. So putting your time in and having some of the days of your life gives you super thick skin, especially whenever you're able to come back from it and be like, I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad I went through that. And I'm telling you, past 6 months have been super stressful, but I'm so glad I went through every drop of it.
You are. Okay. Well, thanks for coming in. Longhorns can support you by buying your product, trying it if they've never had it before. It's really good. It's also really good to mix with, alcohol. It's also really good to drink plain, both. So I think we should all watch you and see what happens with you and your company.
Thanks so
that's
much.
why I wanted to bring you in, because I want people to like you to be on their radar.
Yes.
And then help if they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming in. Hook 'em horns.
Thanks so much, Sarah.